I want you guys to pause where you are in life right now. Step away from any chaos and picture yourselves walking along a lightly weathered forest trail. The sun is soft as it glistens through the canopy above, and the air is seemingly sweet, full of life. Moving forward from this place, you find yourself in a sloping valley, mountains surrounding you, elk nesting grounds at your feet, and the Colorado blue sky above. It is quiet, a gentle peace. These were the sacred places of my childhood. The childhood home that I traversed with my father and brother, and the family ranch up past Woodland Park that I walked with my grandfather. It was here that I fell in love with creation in all the various ways it reveals its creator. Moving forward from here, and all the memories I formed thereafter, lay the foundation for what I want to share with you here today. Humanity isn't complete without the gift of God's creation to us. Genesis 1:26 says, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." This was the verse I kept in mind when I conducted my first interview with Travis Cox, a professor at Naropa University who specialized in ecopsychology and environmental therapy. I first asked him how he believed man fits into creation, and his response was quite profound. He detailed the teachings of a theologian he knew, who said, "Care for the earth the way that I, God, would care for it." Now, in today's political climate, being environmentally conscious and working to protect it have certain connotations that aren't always positive. It can cause people to create stereotypes and box people in unnecessarily. And I'm sad to say that when I first chose my capstone, this was a real fear. I didn't want my message or what I loved to be misinterpreted or taken the wrong way. It wasn't until I worked on my mission statement for that first capstone rough draft that I recalled the words of author N.T. Wright, a biblical scholar who wrote the book After You Believe. In his work, he details how we as people are a holy priesthood, destined to rule. A huge and heavy concept, but when taken within the context of my capstone, it becomes extremely simple and ties back into what Cox has to say. I remember sitting there and feeling it resonate with me as everything suddenly seemed to fall into place. The earth is a beautiful, beautiful gift to us. It is something very special, and I love being around it, and I shouldn't feel ashamed for that. I want you to realize that every time you take a step outside and stand around and look at the grass and everything that lives in it, you are looking at something pure, something man hasn't flawed, something straight out of God's imagination. You're literally witnessing and experiencing a manifestation of his mind. Caring for the earth is a beautiful responsibility we've been given. The privilege to give life to something that gives back just as much, if not more. It represents community in a deep and intimate way. We are fulfilling one of God's original tasks for man, drawing closer to who he is and who he wants us to become. The earth, chaotic and beautiful, especially in its most untamed and wild places. I remember talking with Cox, and it's no wonder to me why, when I asked him how most of his students came to join his program, he said that over 60% of them didn't even necessarily choose it to major in. They just chose it to experience creation and see what would come of the course. One such student, a woman who was caught up in the busy and bustling lifestyle of her industry, joined to see how it would improve her quality of life. At the end of the year-long course, she could say that her work and productivity had greatly improved. She had taken up outdoor yoga and various activities that, though seemingly small, had a really big impact. I myself, hearing this, began to do the same. I created time in my schedule to walk outdoors every day, even for just 10 minutes at a time. And I can guarantee you, it really did benefit me in ways I didn't even think of. And I would encourage you to do the same. Community. Something that can truly come from the space we inhabit every day. One such thing that stuck out to me was a book I read called The Soul Unearthed. It is a book made up of poems and passages and excerpts from dirtbaggers, ecologists, and outdoor leaders who give everything they have on the daily to this beautiful world we live in. It ranges from around 8 parts, starting with the spirit of a place to what it means to be human. One such excerpt, however, from a man named Jed Swift, a professor himself at Naropa University as well, and an outdoor guide, took a group of about 20 participants, previously strangers, mind you, to hike a peak in the Sangre de Cristo range of Colorado called Broken Hand, a 13,800-foot peak. Now, the initial hike began smoothly. It was beautiful weather, but as Colorado does, the weather soured quickly, as we all know, and they had to make a quick turnaround. The trek back to camp became dangerous, but as he moved, Swift recounts that the people began to move in that special way that develops when people have bonded with each other out in several days in the wilderness. Hands reaching out to hands, words of comfort and encouragement to one another through the mists and gusts of the wind, and eyes sharply focused on not just the next step ahead, but the progress of those around them. As they came to a ledge, slippery and dangerous because of the rain, they had to rope up and work their way down. Swift, making sure everyone had reached the ground on the other side safely, began the descent himself. He was filled with worry. It was not a safe journey at all. Hypothermia was an extreme risk. He had to make sure that everyone was working together as a team and that morale stayed up in order to return home safely. But what happened when he reached his descent at the bottom of the ledge stuck with both him and me, the reader, and is something I remember quite clearly. As he landed and took his rope off, he saw the group of previous strangers, all 20 of them, singing at the top of their lungs and huddled in a warm embrace, keeping the weakest and the coldest at the center of the group as they let their combined spirit lead them forward back to camp. I read this and was shocked. There is something so beautiful and unique about the community and life nature can provide. The seemingly uncomfortable and primitive has a special kind of beauty. And at the end of the day, I believe the secret to why nature is so effective is this. After every small experience or journey, big and small, you walk away having gained an idea of what it means to be human. Humans are messy. We are messy. We are complex and ornate, physically, mentally, emotionally, and it's just like our Creator, a beautiful reflection of it. We are, however, not without flaw. The in and out daily struggles and pain can quickly overwhelm us and discourage us. And as this is our reality, we are found constantly searching for reprieve and relief in ways healthy and unhealthy alike. I was fascinated by this. And I remember when I initially started my capstone, I wanted to study how nature in and of itself could bring healing and be therapeutic even to those who hurt and suffer. Ecotherapy is a small but growing practice. It can be found all over the United States if you look for it, and it is specifically kind of clustered around the West Coast in states like California, Colorado, Utah. And the one I'm going to talk about today, New Vision Wilderness, is actually located in Oregon. This organization takes troubled teens and young adults who struggle with mental illnesses or childhood trauma and work to give them the tools they need to heal and recover. Their mission state being, through the wilderness experience in these locations, young people and their parents have a chance to heal their relationships and foster personal growth in their life. As I read the various accounts and studied these organizations, something about it just resonated with me. And looking back over my senior year, though I didn't necessarily see it or want to admit it at that time, I was actually looking for that same healing myself. My mother always tells me the story of how, when I was a little girl, I always struggled to go to sleep. My parents tried so many different things, from putting me in a completely dark room and giving me total silence to singing me lullabies and rocking me in my favorite chair. But most things were ultimately ineffective due to my colic and various other reasons. But my mother always mentions this one specific occasion where I was up late into the evening and nothing was working. It was all the same things, and I was still up crying uncontrollably. My father had wanted to give my exhausted mother a chance to rest, as she had been particularly tired that day and had been home caring for me. My father went to go step outside just to give my mother a break from hearing me cry and give her a chance to rest. Not even thinking that as soon as he took me outside, I immediately stopped crying. I quieted down, and as he held me, he said I gently began to doze off as I stared up into the sky and saw the stars and let the sound of the chirping crickets lull me to sleep. I can say that through the years, not much has changed. Through my various adventures and experiences growing up, they usually take place outside with my friends and loved ones through backwood trails, gardens, and mountain terrain. I have always loved going there and being there with the people I care about, and it is these spaces that hold some of my most precious moments. Whenever I have felt broken or lost or have been hurting, I usually take time to step outside and either sit or go for a walk. And as I breathe out, I let the sound of life around me and the gentle buzzing that occurs when you walk and you hear the little crickets chirping or the sounds of birds. I let that occupy the space that worry and doubt has usually fulfilled. It wasn't until my senior year of high school and this whole year-long experience that I actually learned to appreciate the flip side to that coin, which was in this case, nature's silence. The trip that began it all, the senior retreat. It was a very fun one. Not only were we sitting out and camping in a remote location in Gunnison, Colorado, but the entire senior class was anxiously waiting to participate in what is referred to as the solo. A challenge by choice experience in which students are asked to spend 8 hours alone in the wilderness with just a journal, a Bible, a small bag of snacks, and if they do so, require one comfort item. When I heard about this, I was actually extremely excited for it. It reminded me of all the other adventures I'd previously been on, and I thought this wasn't going to be much of a challenge at all. It was just going to be like another day trip I had been on, only I'd be by myself. But I was so confident and not intimidated at all, I didn't even feel the need to bring a comfort item. I wanted to embrace everything I could get out of it. On the day of, I remember all of us students were donning our blindfolds so that we wouldn't know the location of the other students around us. And as we all loaded up into the van, I was anxious to get out there into my space. I remember getting outside, taking my blindfold off, and after receiving my journal and my little emergency whistle, I took off into the woods behind me and settled immediately into my space. Throughout the first couple hour or two, I sat there and worked to fill out all the journal prompts and do everything I could that would settle me into the space. But I soon found myself unsettled and bored. And I didn't quite know why at first, but I soon realized that it was the silence that began to get to me. Insecurities and fears that I had had throughout the year and things that I had struggled with throughout my life suddenly became bubbling to the surface as I had put myself in a space that allowed me to be alone with my mind and my own thoughts for once, something that I subconsciously dreaded. As I sat there and cried, I remember talking to God about everything I was feeling, all the anger, all the hurt, all the pain, until out of the corner of my eye, I saw a doe enter into the outskirts of my clearing. I soon quieted down as I realized she was there, and I sat patiently waiting, hoping she would come into my space if I just sat there long enough and was patient. To my surprise, though, she stopped grazing after a minute or two and turned on her heel and left, back the way she came. This, combined with the silence of the space I was so unused to and the doe's absence, hit me with a feeling of loneliness and rejection I had never known. I felt like God had truly left me there to just deal with myself. I felt abandoned. I was emotionally exhausted. I had already been there for what felt like hours, and usually in moments like those, I find myself falling asleep to try to escape it all. It wasn't until I woke up after that short nap that everything came into perspective, and I felt conviction. Because upon waking up, there, a few yards from my feet, was the doe, and two others with her. I suddenly realized how short-sighted I had been, and how God had really been there with me all along in His presence. Now I have to wrap this up as we are coming to a close, but I want you to realize the gift you have been blessed with, and how, if you let it, it can reveal the gift of God's creation. So I encourage you to go home today, take a walk outside with your loved ones, and if you find yourself in a quiet place of the wilderness, take a moment to appreciate the silence.